Welcome to the 13th video in this series where we are slowly but surely building a top-down 2D racer with Godot. If you're still with me by this stage, then well done to you. So what we're going to do is have a little bit of an easier time, I think, in this one than the previous videos. We're going to finish off our race controller in terms of being able to actually force a stop to cars still going on and detect when cars have actually managed to complete the number of target laps. So going into the race control scene itself, let's have a look at what we have up here. We're going to need access to our RACEOVER timer because we're going to start that as soon as the race is over. Then I'll scroll down into the on lap completed. So it's in here that we need to detect when an RD, a race data, actually has achieved the race completed. So our car race data class, hopefully you can remember, we've got this property here, race completed. When that's true, the race was completed. Now, when the race is completed, we need to make sure the cars don't do anything. So if we go to the car.gd, and have a look at the way we're managing our state here, we need to be a little bit careful. We're going to have a separate state, I think, actually, for race being over. And when we're in the race over state for a car, that's going to mean that we cannot ever change into any other state or anything else. Basically, once we're over, we're over. The car's never going to do anything else. So add a new state here called race over. And then on the left-hand side here, find the change state function, drop down to that. So we'll add the race over after this one here. So when we change into the race over state, and if we're in the race over state, we'll set the physics process to false. And the reason I'm saying we have to be careful here is because when our bounce is done or something, we set the state back into driving, which sets the physics process to true. And it could be, for a car, that its race over is called whilst it's spinning or bouncing because it's not winning the race, but its race over will be invoked when the race timer runs out. So we need to basically hard code into here, or I'm going to do it for this design anyway, to say if it's race over, then we're done. We're not doing any state changes or anything like that. So here what we're going to do is put in a little bit of a guard. We're going to say that if the state is equal to our race over state, we just return. Now, I do have to say this is questionable as to whether it's the cleanest way of doing this. It's perfectly adequate for what I wanted to do in this game, which is once it's race over, that's it. We're going back to the main menu, whatever happens. You might want to implement something a little bit cleaner, though, if you want some more flexibility. But for our use case, and I think for this series, which is already complicated enough, I think that's okay. So I'm going to save that, go back to the racecontroller.gd. And now what we want to do is we want to start our timer, so our race over timer, if the race has actually been completed in terms of the number of laps. I'll make a little bit of space down here, and I'm also going to go to distraction-free mode as well. For this, it's a little bit easier, I think. So we're going to ask if race data dot and race completed, then we want to get hold of our current car, and we're going to change the state of that car to the race over state. And now that the race has been completed, we can also set the total time taken. However, if I go to the car race data, I think we've got the total time here. But let's make a setter function to do this, actually. So we'll make a new function called setTotalTime, and we'll send in the total as a float. We can set our total time then equal to total. And maybe for naming here, I could actually put the time on the end of here as well. There we go. So we'll invoke this then from inside our race controller. So I'll go back into our race controller. And we can say then that our race data dot, and we'll set the total time. That's going to be equal to our time dot, and we want the get ticks milliseconds minus our start time. So what we should see now is when a car crosses the line, having completed a lap and completed the total laps for the race, it should basically just stop at the start-finish line, hopefully. Anyway, having been put into the race over state. Finally, inside here, we need to decide whether or not to start the race over timer. We only want to do this for the first car that passes the finish line. So we'll check whether the race over timer is running. So we'll ask, is it stopped? Because if it's stopped, that means it's never been started, in which case what we'll do is we'll then start it. So we'll start the race over timer. So now what should happen is when the cars complete the race, they should stop. We're not yet dealing with the timeout and the cars that haven't managed to finish yet. I'd like to check that this is working. And whilst I do that, I realize also in the setup here that this should be a percentage, shouldn't it? Not a comma. Keep doing that time and time again. That's better. And what we can do is have a go at running this. So I'm going to come out of distraction-free modes and the race controller selecting the track. I'm going to drop that to 3 laps, I think. Now, I don't want to play this actually myself, so I'm actually going to delete the player car out of here so that we've just got the 3 CPU cars in here. And then run this, and we're going to press S, and I'll speed this up and be right back to see actually whether they all stop on the finish line or not. Okay, so I'm back, and the first and the second car have finished. Fred is a little bit slow. I do need to improve the behavior on oil slicks, but let's see. Hey, excellent, good. So Fred has stopped as well. That's great. So they're all now stopping the race. The race has been detected as over, which is great. So I'll press F8 to close that down and close down the output. So we can turn our attention now to finishing the race. So I'll go to distraction-free mode again, because it's a little bit easier. So the race completed here is working. It's here we're going to deal with the finishing of the race, except we'll write a second function for that. So we'll call this finish race. Okay, first thing here is a little bit of a sort of a sanity check. If we've already finished, then we'll just return. It shouldn't happen, but you never know if things finish exactly on the same frame together or something like that. And then we'll set finished is equal to true. And then we can also make sure that we remember to invoke this function down in the timer here. And now for each of the cars that we have, what we want to do is calculate how much progress they have made around the lap between 0 and 1. That sounds more complicated actually than it is in terms of the implementation. So what we need is the total length of the track. So I'm going to make a new variable, call this total len, I guess. That can be a float. And we can set that equal then to our track curve dots, and we want to get the baked length. Now, arguably, we could actually have set this as a variable at the top of the class rather than grabbing this each time. Now I think about it, but we'd have to put a second variable in here because we're going to need the track curve anyway in a moment. So we won't. We'll just leave it as it is here with the total length like this. Next, we can iterate through the cars, and we need to find the cars that haven't finished the race. So we'll say for C in and cars. Then we can grab the race data for that particular car. So we can say var rd car race data is equal to our race data for our particular car. Then we say if not and rd.race completed, then this is a car where we need to set this progress value. So to do that, what we're going to do is find its offset based on the nearest point on the curve to where it actually is. So we'll say a var offset, that's going to be a float, and that's going to be equal to our track curve dot get and closest offset, and we want that closest offset to be from that car's global position. So that gives us the offset in pixels. And what we can do is divide that by the total length to actually get the progress. So we'll do var and progress, make that a float, and that's equal then to our offset divided by our total length. Now what we need to do is update this race data with this progress fraction, and I don't think we have a function to do that. So I'm going to go back to car race data. No, we don't have anything inside here, so we should add a function for that. And we can call this function force finish. And we'll send into here then the total time, which is going to be a float, and we're also going to send in that progress. So the partial progress will be equal then to the progress, and the total time will be equal to total time. Okay, so we can go back to the racecontroller.gd, and we can force this finish. We'll take the race data, and then we can force a finish. We need here the total time that's actually been taken. Now, probably rather than calculating that new each time in here, we could actually calculate that up here. So we'll make var and call it maybe elapsed. That can be a float. And that can be equal to our time dot, and we want get ticks milliseconds, and we can subtract from that our start time. And then we can send into here our elapsed, and we want to send in our progress. Now, I've got the feeling that we've done this a couple of times, this particular piece of code. I'm just going to highlight that, do Control F to find. We've got that twice, at least here. Let's make a little function, actually, for this, just called get elapsed time. It's not very complicated, but I'll get elapsed time. And then we'll return a float, and then we can return the code that I've got down here. So return, and then we can replace that other code with that. I think that's a little bit neater. So I'll do set total time, get elapsed time. And then we can do the same thing down here as well. So we'll do get elapsed time. Okay, so we've now set the stats, hopefully, with the progress that we've actually managed to make. Finally, last but not least, we can change the state of the car. So we'll do c dot and change state, and we need to put this then into the race over state. And deep breath, and that should be everything we need. So what should happen now is when the race is over, we should start the timer if we haven't already started it. And then when the timer times out, it's going to pick up any car that hasn't completed the race yet, calculate the partial progress, and we should see when we inspect the data that we do have some kind of partial progress in there. So I'm going to come out of a distraction-free mode and wonder what I've missed in the code. This time I've got the feeling that I've missed something, but I'm about to find out. My apologies if I have. Selecting the race controller, I'm actually going to make this have maybe 2 laps here, and then the timer for the race controller. So if we go into the race controller, that's actually been configured here, hard-coded. We could export a property. I'm going to put the wait time down to 2 seconds here so that we definitely have a straggler in the race. Go back to the track. I think Fred is really slow in my case. Yeah, there's no way Fred's going to keep up. So to be able to inspect these stats, we need a breakpoint though, don't we? So go back into script view. We've got finish race here. I'm going to put a pass here actually, and then put a breakpoint here. And I'm going to run the application. I'll be right back after a fade where I'm going to let them race, and then I'll be right back to see what these statistics are. Hopefully they're okay. Okay, so I'm back and the race is over here. The main thing now is to check whether the data is okay, and we're going to have hopefully 2 different looking progresses as well. So I've got the breakpoint here, and I'm going to go and have a look at our race data. There we go. So who's the first one? That's Maisie. And Maisie has race completed. So it looks like Maisie actually won. I'm going to go to the output. Yep, Maisie won. Good. Okay, so that's a good start. So Maisie won. Then who's the next one? The next one's Flossie. And that is good to see. So it's only completed 1 lap, but has a partial progress of 0.8. on the second lap. So it's completed 1.8 laps, and that looks pretty much correct. The main thing is Fred. Fred is at 0.59. Excellent. Okay, yep. So that looks good to me. That's great, because that means that we're able now to run a race and finish the race. And when we finish the race, we'll later be able to sort a leaderboard here by progress for cars that haven't finished the race, but they're on the same lap. And that actually closes the loop of starting and finishing a race, which is really good as well. So we'll stop this video here. What we're going to do in the next one is we're going to add a little bit of UI in the corners of the game so that we can see the progress of each car, how many laps and their lap time. And we'll also add a little game over UI in the middle as well so we can see a leaderboard when the race is over. So I'll see you in the next video for that one. Thanks very much for watching this one.